It's really, really good to see everyone. It's also my first meditation. I'm just going to spotlight myself so you can see me. It's also my first meditation in 2023. So I want to wish you all a happy civil year. I really love it that we have several opportunities for new beginnings as Jews. We have the civil year and we have like our own 4 new years, right? Because we have 4 of them. To Bishvat, the new year of the trees, is coming in like a little under a month. So time for renewal, time for hitratshut in Hebrew. Let's take a couple of renewing breaths before we start, shall we? Okay, and deep breath in. A long, generous breath out, maybe blowing out through the mouth. A couple of times like this, allowing the body to kind of land a little more in this moment. Beautiful, slow, conscious breath in. And breathing out, allowing the body to sink a little deeper in the chair, feet on the floor. Maybe you can already feel the effect of what it's like to take 3 slow, generous, conscious breaths. I hope you do. And if you don't, I promise with time, it really, that's what happens when you meditate, when you have a regular practice. You can access so much faster the kind of like deep quiet inside. A deep quiet that's always accessible. And that really is the gift of practice. Coming back to ourselves, coming back to practice. And so, speaking of coming back, this week we're going towards opening a new beginning, opening a new book in the reading of the Torah, opening the book of Shemot, literally the names, and known in Hebrew as Exodus, right? Because it's known as the book in which the kind of central event is Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, which is really seen as kind of our second birth, right? Like we had the birth of us as a tribe, a family in Bereshit, in the book of Genesis, with literally the Genesis, the formation of us as a tribe with the story of our ancestors. And then there's the birth of us as a people through this book. And yet beyond that kind of collective dimension and beyond also the kind of any type of like historical connotation to Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Hasidic masters really highlight the inner dimension of what happens in this book, the inner dimension of being in Egypt, being in Mitzrayim, and of going out of Egypt, Mitzrayim. And this is what I want to share with you today. So I'm going to share my screen with a pasuk from our parasha. I just want to see, by a show of hands, if you can see my soul sheet right now. Can I have a thumbs up if you can see it? Okay. So something very simple. First pasuk, opening of the parasha. And it says, Ve'ekam melech chadash al Mitzrayim, and a new king arose over Egypt. Asher lo yada et Yosef, who didn't know Yosef. Lo yada, this notion here, this word, coming from the root, coming from the word da'at, which is sometimes translated as knowledge, and often also, and especially in spiritual terms, translated as awareness. And so as usual, we have several levels of reading. And this is the pshat level of reading, right? This is the literal level of reading. Looks like a history. It looks like a story in history, right? There is a new king. He didn't know Yosef. And the Meor Einayim, the Rebbe Menachem Nachum in Chernobyl, comments on this pasuk. I'm just going to check the chat to just double check that everything's fine. Okay, thank you. Kat has just posted the source sheet in the chat if you need to see it there. But actually, it's really like you can just close your eyes and listen to me. It's just a couple of verses, really. So the Meor Einayim, which is the name of his book, his commentaries on the parasha, Menachem Nachum in Chernobyl, whom I'm studying right now with a group of students. He's saying, Ach, venadua, sod galut Mitzrayim. But it is known that the secret of the exile in Egypt, who? Ki hadat haya begalut. That consciousness, awareness was in exile. This is his definition of being in Egypt. And I always connected so much to the Hasidic readings on the parasha, because it goes so much beyond the notion of, Pesach as commemorating historical facts or not, right? It goes into meaning. It goes into what's meaningful and what's relevant to us. It goes into the spiritual meaning of it, right? And the invitation here is to see Egypt not as a country, but as a state of mind, right? And this is also, the Haggadah tells us that each of us personally, we have to see ourselves as if we had been personally gone out of Egypt ourselves. So it kind of highlights, it kind of implies that there is this very, very personal dimension here, of a personal journey, and therefore that it's eternal. It's an eternal question, and it's an eternal process, right? In a way, Egypt is always there, right? We always have these moments where we slip back into Egypt, and that's when we kind of lose awareness. Does anyone relate to that? Right? Like losing awareness during the day, not being really mindful of what we're doing, not being really conscious, right? And then the whole kind of heart, the whole intention of spiritual practice is actually regaining awareness, right? Regaining more clarity, living from a place of mindfulness, being conscious. And we can see the damage it does to the world when people, and especially when people who have power, are lacking awareness, starting with self-awareness, right? And so this is an invitation to pay attention, to regain awareness, to regain consciousness. And I just want to really pause here and invite us to go in our meditation with just this very, very simple message from the Meor Einayim. When we read the Torah, what we read is very much like an inner map, like a map of our own minds, right? And exile, we all know what it's like to be in exile, what it's like to be alienated from ourselves. But there is always the possibility of regaining awareness. And one of the ways we do it, we're doing it right now, we're about to do it right now, is to just pause, and make space to bear witness to what's alive in us. Just that. And so we know that from mindfulness practice, but we also know that from Jewish spiritual teachings, such as the Hashkata technique taught by the Piazetzner Rebbe, who starts by saying, observe your mind, observe your thoughts. So I want to invite us to do this practice that is so simple, so deceptively simple, and yet that really is all it takes to be free. So friends, let's adjust our posture if you need to. I'm adjusting my posture. I'm sitting cross-legged on the floor. If you have your feet on the floor, I want to invite you to uncross your legs so that you can really sit like a free human being, standing tall, grounded in the earth, grounded in your own body. Let's again take a deep breath in. A grounding breath, out breath. And as our body sinks a little deeper, maybe we feel the spine stretching a little longer. And as we feel our back strong like a tree that we can actually really lie upon, instead of relying on the back of the chair or the wall, like relying on your own back. That also is freedom, friends. And as we feel our strong back, we can feel our belly and our chest soften. The whole front of the body softens. Maybe taking a moment to check if there is any constriction, contraction in the jaw, and kind of releasing it. Relaxing the muscles of the eyes as well. I'll just sit quietly. Just really taking a kind of open, receptive observer stance, receptively observing what's going on. Grounding ourselves in our body. And instead of being in the trains of thoughts as we tend to usually be unconsciously during the day, we actually see them from the outside. We see them come. We notice them. We let them be. We let them pass. There is nothing to do per se, nothing to achieve. Just to deeply relax in being. And bringing awareness to anything that happens in our experience as we sit. And that includes bodily sensations, emotions, thoughts, sounds. And every time we notice, we drifted away in thought again. Just this moment of awareness. Oh, just that is freedom. Coming back to our body over and over again. Can we come to full presence for the last minute? Being aware of this body sitting and breathing. Just that. May we be present, aware, and kind to ourselves and to others. Take a deep breath in, a beautiful breath out. Let's get ready to say Kaddish with Rabbi Josh.
Thank you, Mira. So in a moment, we'll those who would like to stay around and have a chance to share some conversation with Mira and me about the practice, welcome you to do so. We're now going to have a chance for those who are reciting Kaddish to do so. And if you have the name of someone you're remembering today, please feel welcome to add it to the chat. We're going to put the text of Kaddish up on the screen and invite you, if you are reciting Kaddish, to unmute and you can join me. Okay. Yitkadal
Shmei Rabbah, Alma, Divrach Yirteh, V'amlich Malchuteh, B'chayecha, V'yomecha, V'chayei, B'chol Beit Yisrael, B'ad Halacha U'Zman Karev V'Ur, Amen. V'hei Shmei Rabbah, V'rach Rabbah, V'ulomeh Almayah, V'rach V'yishbach V'yitpar V'yitman V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yishtaleh V'yitalal V'yidusha V'yiku V'yita Tushbecheta V'mata Damaran V'alma V'ur Amen. V'hei Shlama Rabba Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'Yisrael V'yimru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'imanav Huyaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Israel V'imru Amen.
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 If you're departing, we wish you a tzedchem l'shalom, farewell. Hope to see you again tomorrow, same time, same channel. And want to welcome Mira back and say, as always, thank you, Mira, for just, you're a wonderful mindfulness meditation teacher, as we always say in the introduction. It was really great. And I loved your teaching at the beginning from the Me'orei Naim about the idea of da'at, awareness, being in exile, right? That as like so many of the Hasidic masters, right, he spiritualizes the idea of Mitzrayim, of the constriction and the exile. And not to take away from the historical element, but the spiritual reality of that we have in every moment, right, is an invitation, it seems, to come back to our awareness. As always, I wonder if you want to elaborate more on that, just for you, like how that shows up for you in your practice, and also for everybody here, how was your experience? What was your experience of the sit today? How that invitation to reawaken, is constantly this reemergence from Mitzrayim, from Egypt. So yeah, that's where I would start.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Thank you. Yeah, I would also love to see in the chat like how it went for you, friends. And in the meantime, I can share with you, Josh. how relevant it is for me, this teaching. And one of the things that are so beautiful about it, well, first of all, it's important for me, as you reminded, like the kind of like de-essentialization, right? That it's not it's not the question. It's not it's not about them and the us and we were it's speaking about processes. And so that makes it very, very relevant for each of us. And then the second thing about it is that he doesn't say it explicitly, but the way I read it is that obviously this question of awareness, being there or not being there, or you being with it or being lost to it, which is another way of speaking about self-alienation, right? Being kind of a stranger to ourselves, being like outside of our own like center, speaks to the fact that it's not like that you were in this place and then you will be in the place where you're always aware and always fine, right? Life is like this constant movement. That's what really speaks to me. Is like, oh, Egypt is right there. I can go back right there any moment. Any moment I stop being mindful, I'm right back there. But the good news is, any moment I can also come back. I can also be free. So Yetziat Mitzrayim is something we can experience 1,000 times during a meditation, during a sit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think also tied to like, the idea of Mitzrayim as Mitzarim, as these narrow, constriction places. Jerry here says like a sense of liberation. That moment, I always find the moment of becoming aware that my awareness has drifted, right? That when I wake up to my own unawareness, is this moment of, oh, right, there's like a bit of intoxication, right, from like in a good way. And it's one of the things that is a classic sort of, I think, teaching in mindfulness practice is to get hooked on that. That's conditioning ourselves to be like kind of revel in that moment of, I'm aware, and now, sort of hold that for a second, say, okay, now I'm going to choose to bring my focus back to my anchor. Is this regular liberation from Mitzrayim that we're always I feel like I can always enact in some way.
You mentioned one of the second like main Hasidic readings on the meaning of Yetziat Mitzrayim, which some of you may be familiar with, this notion that Mitzrayim, and the Mira also says it, but others say it also, that he says, it's not, don't call it Egypt, call it Meitzarim, or call it Tsarim. So the place of constrictedness, which is yet another dimension. We have the kind of like exile from awareness, and then we have, which goes often together, when we're not kind of in our center, there is something in us that shrinks, that gets like contracted. And even when we meditate, actually, and when we bring awareness, every time we're less present or we're going through difficult things, the kind of like temptation in a way is to kind of constrict ourselves, and then the invitation in the practice is to kind of surrender and soften and find that kind of like space within. So that's one thing, and I just wanted to highlight that when you said like the constricted place, like it's one of the really, really, really the beautiful aspects of the Hasidic take on the Exodus. And then I just like that you spoke about the moment, this moment of like, oh, where was I? I was in my thoughts, and and I think it's important to remind that sometimes we may have the kind of natural response when we're meditating, and sometimes, even towards the end of the sit, we wake up somehow and we realize, oh, where was I during this like, whole period of time? And sometimes we see it as a failure. Right? Oh, I'm a bad meditator. I wasn't present. Where was I? Right? Does that ring a bell to anyone? Can I see a show of hands of like who sometimes judges themselves for like not being there all the time, right? And yet, as teachers remind us, this moment is the moment of the practice. It's the moment of victory. And if we have it even once, even at the end of a sit, even when the bell rings or when the instructor tells, let's come back, this is spiritual awakening. This is freedom right there. So every of these moments, and this is really my invitation for you, friends, is we should really, really be happy. Actually, oh, I came back. Not oh, I was gone, but oh, I came back. It's really the kind of half full glass versus the half empty.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Ricky asked, please teach me more about this Torah text so we will be reminded this Shabbat whenever we read parts of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, yeah. What do you want to say there?
No, you know what? I'll share something with you because I actually just wrote like a blog post about it where I kind of like develop this more. So I can share it. But you know, this teaching in itself is very, very simple. If you read the blog post, like then you can no, this is not the blog post. Or is it? Yeah, I think you should anyway, you'll see it on the website if that's not the right link, where I really expand on this idea. But the teaching of the Me'or Einayim is exquisite. And one more thing I can say, if you want, right now, like he speaks about this in the context again, right, of the idea of a new king that rose and that didn't know Yosef, right? And I love that a lot of his commentaries, he's picking up on one word, and from this one word, he really goes really, really far. And one thing to note about that, he doesn't speak about it explicitly, but the first time we see about that in the Torah is in Bereshit, at the very beginning of Bereshit, when Adam knows Chava, when Adam knows his wife. Basically, they're making love, and that tells us something else about awareness. That awareness is not an intellectual thing; it's actually a very intimate way of knowing. If I want to use a contemporary language, a holistic way of knowing that is both, you know, somatic and spiritual, because it's really becoming one. That's awareness. It's becoming one. It's not like there is me and the object of knowledge. It really is becoming one, and that connects us also, this becoming one, to the creative force of life, which is the divine force of life. This is where he goes after. Spoiler. This is where he goes. Yeah,
right. There's a lot to like develop from it, and I think it is so interesting that it's like this foundational, in many ways, it's this very foundational teaching, right, in both in mindfulness practice and Buddhist practice of this moment of awareness, but also, you know, we have our own mitzvah of remembering Yetziat Mitzrayim, right? To remember our exodus from Egypt. Exactly. Every day, right? We have it built into the Shema twice a day. You know, that there's a sort of constant effort to remember that. It's one of the purposes of Shabbat, is to remember the exodus from Egypt as well as creation, right? So this is this very basic building block that so much else builds on top of. And it's I love the conversation that's happening here.
Yeah.
You know, in the chat, it's always fascinating. And Simcha has a lot to say. I see here too, about the sense of liberation. I mean, one of the things that also occurs to me, Mira, is that like in what you're talking about, there's also a relationship between the concepts of with the concepts of like tshuva, of return. We teach that a lot here, is like, you know, returning to our intention. And to me, there's this relationship between alienation or exile, galut, and then coming home, right? So the notion of like being there, that sense of liberation and unification, right, is also a sense of being at home in my own body, at home in the universe, in the cosmos. I wonder if that's also like a part of either the teaching of the Me'or Einayim or something that you develop as well.
So that's something I developed, literally, the being at home. Like I literally finished like my blog post with this. So we're like in sync. He doesn't speak explicitly of this, but he's speaking of like interestingly, like galut, so this notion of being in the land of Israel, out of the land of Israel. And he's saying actually the land is your own body. It's are you like kind of within yourself, or are you not? Are you kind of like a side of yourself? And I feel that this is one of the things we do in meditation. We just come back home to our bodies, right? I mean, it's so easy, it happens so fast in this society to get dissociated, right? To get over intellectual, because everything in our society encourages living right here, and not so much with the body. And meditation, I think, is really, really, really important for that. And this returning home, as you said, is tshuva, and it's actually one of the dimension I almost spoke about it tonight, like of mindfulness practice, which is remembering. So remembering our true nature and remembering to come back.
Mm.
I'm also loving the commentaries.
Yeah, and this is a great question for Ricky, right? The end of the sentence, Shelo Yada et Yosef. We didn't know, not only like, so without awareness for sure, but also of particularly Yosef, which connotes, something that is additional, right? His name in particular. I wonder if anything to respond to there. I wonder. It's a great insight.
I think it's very interesting. I think there may be, I don't know of it, but there may be one. And I think what's interesting also is that you saw it, Ricky. And I think we all have the power. Literally, it's in our kind of like a reshut to see things and to think things from Torah. Like the text is ours, and I think we should all like really, really reclaim it in this way, like by asking questions and by kind of
Yeah. Beautiful. Wonderful. All right. Well, I think that may be a good place for us it feels like we might have reached our pausing point, unless you have any last words, Mira, that you want to add.
I'm just really grateful for this community and for your beautiful presence, to all of you and for you. And if anyone wants to learn, like I'm actually doing a chavura on this, on the Meor Einaim, on Shema, so you're welcome.
And they can find information on on the website you posted. Yeah.
And if not information, you can write to me from the website. You can contact me with pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Mira. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll be back tomorrow, same time and channel. So thank you so much. Okay. Be well.
Beautiful day.
Okay.